Both How I Met Your Mother and The Big Bang Theory were two of the most beloved television sitcoms when they graced the airwaves in the 2000s and 2010s, with hilarious characters that shattered the usual sitcom mold and took us on hilarious misadventures that will be remembered fondly forever. However, one of the actors that ended up landing a role on The Big Bang Theory almost made it on How I Met Your Mother first, in a change that would have changed both shows for the worse. Which character was almost not played by the eventual actor? When you look back on both of these shows, which have already run their course on TV, all of the show's characters probably come to mind with ease, right? I mean, even if you weren't a huge fan of one or both of these shows, I'm sure most people who weren't living under a rock in the mid-2010s could tell you the main cast of both of these shows. Of course, there is Ted, Marshall, Lily, Robin, and Barney from How I Met Your Mother, and of course there's Leonard, Raj, Howard, Penny, Bernadette, Amy, and Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. While all of these characters are memorable in some way, there are two standout names that are clearly above the rest in terms of being memorable characters, and these two names, of course, are Sheldon and Barney. These two characters were hilariously different, but yet they were the lifeblood of their respective shows. Of course, one could argue that Sheldon was the main character in The Big Bang Theory, but it is impossible to say that Barney was the main character in How I Met Your Mother. While he was the most memorable and the most entertaining of the bunch, he was far from the main character. But did you know that the version of Barney that we see in the show was almost completely different? The role is taken on and crushed by Neil Patrick Harris. However, before he was selected for the role, there was one other actor who was in the running for the role, but took himself out of the running because he felt like he wasn't the best fit. That's right, but the craziest part is the actor actually made a very impactful contribution to The Big Bang Theory. The actor in question, of course, was none other than Jim Parsons, the man who went on to play super genius Sheldon Cooper. And I, for one, am very glad that things worked out the way that they did, because I could not imagine a world in which Parsons donned the single-man suit and hit the town with Ted. What makes Barney Stinson so memorable, and could Jim Parsons have delivered? Obviously, Jim Parsons was on the same page as all of us when he auditioned for the role, having a great sense of self-awareness and realizing that he was a bad fit for the character in question. When he went to the audition and read some of the lines, he realized that he could not realistically portray the type of man that Barney Stinson was written as. And that is far from criticism against Parsons. I think he has a very specific set of skills and quirks that beautifully fit a very different type of character. But Barney is a very different character to tackle, and I'm not sure Neil Patrick Harris gets all the credit he probably deserves for playing this character as well as he did. You see, Barney is a character that had fans of How I Met Your Mother on one side of the fence or the other. There was no in between. You either loved him or you hated him. There were times in which he would say something so repulsive and vile that you just couldn't help but cringe and squirm in your seat. But then there were other times in which he was a genuinely wonderful human being that made you realize that the grossness and the crudeness is all an act, covering up a sweet person who is simply trying to protect themselves from being hurt again. Barney is the outgoing life of the party type that Jim Parsons simply isn't. The way that Barney carries himself, his swagger, his confidence, and yes, his selfishness and ruthlessness are all things that make Barney who he is. And I'm unsure Jim Parsons would have brought these things to the table if he had gotten the role. And without all of these things, we would have a very different show, a show that I frankly think would not be worth watching. If the Neil Patrick Harris version of Barney didn't exist, would the show be good? As I mentioned before, Barney was clearly never the main character in the show How I Met Your Mother. That honor belongs to Ted Mosby, played by Josh Radnor. However, the show did rely heavily on the ensemble cast that had episodes and storylines that used all of the characters. While the overall plot of the show was learning how Ted finally found his eventual wife and mother of his children, the show does spend a great deal of time fleshing out the entire cast of characters. But no character is more fleshed out than Barney Stinson. And if we had gotten a different version of Barney in the actual show, I'm not sure if this show would have been watchable. And hear me out, as good of a guy as Ted may seem, he is actually just as gross as Barney when you think about it. He spends 9 seasons complaining that he can't find the one, and yet he spends almost all of his time hanging out with a guy who is dead set on dying single and having as much meaningless sex as he can. Ted wastes so much time trying to chase after the wrong girls because he is so fixated on getting married to one of them instead of actually waiting to find the one that is worth chasing after. And during his wasted time, he has a crazy amount of meaningless sex. Moreover, Robin is literally the female version of Barney in the sense that she doesn't want love tying her down either and is dead set on making herself the woman that she wants to be before she lets a man dictate her life. While I love that she wants to stick to her guns and be independent, she is rather one-dimensional. She doesn't really change as the show progresses, and her character is far from strong enough to carry an episode by herself if she had to. Now, Marshall and Lily are a package deal. One rarely is featured without the other, or if they are in a scene without the other, the one who isn't there is usually the focus of their scene. They are the classic couple trying to live in a friend group of single people, and they are hilarious fixtures in the challenges that come with that territory. However, much like Robin, neither of these two characters is dynamic. They do not see much change as the show moves forward. forward, and while they are technically funny enough to have an episode revolving around them, they are actually often devoid of any real content. No Barney, no show. Now, to make my incredibly long story short, the show needed Barney to carry the show. Barney was the catalyst of a great many instances in the show, and if it were not for Barney, the show would have been canceled long before we ever met the mother of Ted's children. Like him or hate him, if we did not have the version of Barney that was actually in the show, this would have been a very different sitcom that would likely not be held in as high regard as it currently is. The way Barney was portrayed in the first few seasons is what allowed him to undergo such massive changes towards the end of the show, and he is the only one who legitimately changes as the years go by. If another actor attempted to play Barney, I'm not sure we would have seen the same progression, and we would have been left with a much emptier feeling when the show ended. Not that the ending was very good anyway, but this one change of actors would have been devastating for both shows, as if Parson had taken this role, there would have been no Sheldon Cooper. For as good of a job that Neil Patrick Harris did as Barney, there is actually no other actor on Earth who could have played Sheldon Cooper, and that is a fact. Jim Parsons even said that Neil Patrick Harris is the one true Barney. In an interview on The Late Show with James Corden, Parsons explained that he auditioned for the role of Barney before turning it down, saying, "The funny thing about this is that I auditioned to play Barney and felt that I was very wrong for it, and almost ran screaming from the room after I auditioned." He then immediately proceeded to state that Neil Patrick Harris was the only actor who could have played Barney, and that he was a much better fit. What makes this even funnier is when Parsons was on the show that he was asked about a fan theory that states Barney and Sheldon are bizarro versions of each other from different dimensions, essentially stating that these two characters are so polar opposites that they are almost the same. Their differences in every single aspect make them innately selfish, ruthless, and calculating, but in very different ways. It is a hilarious theory, but it also goes along with my point that if Parsons had played Barney instead of Harris, we would have been in for a very different show, one that would have likely tanked both How I Met Your Mother and The Big Bang Theory equally, because if there's no Sheldon Cooper, then there is no Barney Stinson. And that's all we have for you guys today on the channel. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the content, and we will catch you all in the next video.
She's still drunk from last night.
I don't think so. You guys are crazy. This damn imagery, stop smothering me! Now come out until you promise never to move away! They broke up! We can't run away together. Fear of flying? What, did the plane drive here? Wait, why the top of the Worldwide News building?
Little extra incentive to break up with Nick.
I thought violent images wouldn't be good on national TV every day and... Yeah! You're probably wondering why I've been quiet. But you can't see that Barney is...
I do know what I want.
What do you care about more? Protecting your... You wrap yourself in a comforter stuff with rabbit hair. Need somebody big and strong.
How about the cookies? Are they delicious?
You invited Patrice to my bachelorette party! Bought a Patrice!